And we're back with an all-new episode of Keep It, the final Keep It of the year. I'm Ira Madison III.
I'm Louis Fertel. I'm so sorry if all you can hear in this microphone are the sleigh bells around my neck, jingle jangling, because I'm like Cyndi Lauper in the We Are the World video, just like full of like bangles that are like getting in the mic, and Quincy Jones is like waving a gun in the air, being like, "Can you please stop, Cyndi?"
That reminds me of the fact that in high school, there was this girl who was obsessed with that one song in White Christmas, you know, the like the whole snare drum sound. And
oh, sure, yeah.
She would continuously just make the sound.
Oh, good Lord. What's wrong with her? Is she in Guantanamo now? Okay.
That was my Jaws theme.
Oh, okay. Yeah, here she comes, round the bend.
Yeah. Last episode, a lot happened this year. I remember none of it. Do you remember Challengers came out this year?
I was just thinking, I usually have a pretty razor-sharp memory for everything that happens literally by month in my year. I'm one of those Mira Lou Henner people. I can organize my life. Going back, I'm like, what happened in May of this year? Were there songs? I remember Espresso, and I remember the Challengers, and being surprised it was that good for a movie released in that half of the year. But like, if you had to quiz me on things that happened in February and March, man, this hard living is really catching up with me.
Well, Espresso is a weird one, too, because I went to Coachella this year, and I specifically remember Sabrina Carpenter, Tinashe, and Chappell Roan performed at Coachella. So all three of their big singles this year, Espresso, Nasty, and Good Luck Babe, all came out the week of Coachella.
Oh, wow. And people just were there to experience them. And then all of a sudden, they became all of pop music. Like, those two and Charli XCX were like the definition of music, and almost nobody else qualified this year. Remember Dua Lipa? We would speak about her. We would be like, oh, she dances a little bit slowly, but we like it. This year, it was just these other girls.
I mean, first of all, JoJo Siwa's song Karma came out that week, too. And remember her?
Oh my God, that video with the jump cut where it's like she starts out and she does like what is that called, an aerial, and that except it cuts in the middle of the aerial. So I don't know what's happening there.
Yeah, our stalwarts of pop culture are, you know, doing what they're doing. We're finally free. One, Taylor Swift has ended the Eras tour.
I cannot believe it went on that long. 2 years, and it ended in Vancouver. And the amount of people I know from LA who I think raced out to see her in Arizona when it started, who also went up to see her in Vancouver. Why don't we sit them down? What is going on?
I went to Vegas and never again. That's it.
You know, again, if a ticket had ended up in my lap, I would have gone. I'm surprised the pull she has with every demographic. Like, you can be 4 years old and also 43. It's a sort of a Disneyland vibe. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, Taylor Swift has ended her tour, and Beyonce has ended talking to us.
She's like, that's enough of that. Though it's also, by the way, so shocking to hear her again in the Mufasa movie. I forget that she is indeed a cast member of this series. We will talk to our guest, Billy Eichner, today about this.
When I heard her voice, I had forgotten that she was going to be in the movie.
And did you know that Blue Ivy is in the movie?
She isn't. Well, I mean, I saw the Mufasa press tour.
Yeah, right. So, right, they're all a part of this together. But something we have to ask Billy Eichner is, does he feel like a two-time Beyonce co-star? He might be tied with everybody in the Lion King cast for most times co-starring with Beyonce. You know, like what Leonardo DiCaprio is to Robert De Niro, he is to Beyonce, technically.
Okay, I'm feeling that. I like that for him. I like that for him.
I'm sure he has met her one time, but yes.
We have an announcement. So this is part of my book tour. I'm going to be in Los Angeles on February 2nd at Book Soup, hosted by Book Soup. It's at the First Congressional Church of LA, which sounds like a place I belong.
Yeah, right. Oh, God. I've been asking you to go to church for years. This will help you. Trust.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin on February 3rd at the Oriental Theater. In New York, I'll be at Symphony Space on February 4th. Brooklyn, I'll be at the Bell House on the 5th. And on February 7th, I'll be in Boston having a tea party.
And it's not the same zip code as the Zoom people in Boston, which was 02134. Send it to Zoom. Damn.
I love remembering zip codes from old things like that, like Scruff McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, 60652.
Ooh, I don't even remember that one. I remember Stick Stickly, P.O. Box 963, New York City, New York State 10108. And that was a popsicle stick talking to me.
Oh, I miss Dick Sickly. What do you think he's up to now?
Oh, I know. He is not recycled, for one thing. I think they threw him right down. Because also, he was a plain popsicle stick. He wasn't even one of the deluxe ones with a little joke on the end.
Yeah, and then I'll be in Washington, D.C., February 11th, and Minneapolis, Minnesota, February 12th. So
Huge gamble, assuming people read in all these cities, but good for you. Got to live on the edge. You're only alive once.
You can find tickets at iramadison.com with all the tour dates.
I have definitely never been to iramadison.com. What kinds of fun gifts can I pick up there?
I have a lovely photo of you on it with a heart around your head.
Oh, God. Oh, bone chilling. Good to hear. Yeah.
What else are we talking about this week?
We are going to talk about holiday movies for the hell of it. I'm sure this is a topic this has come up before, but I was literally watching some old Christmas movies the other day, ones I hadn't seen in 100 years. And right now I'm in a space where if I don't participate in Christmas soon enough, I find myself mainlining Christmas material to make sure I get it in before December 26th occurs, and I will never listen to this until next December. But I'm in the process of listening to old songs, newer Christmas music. There's a new list of the best Christmas songs of the 21st century we can talk about too. And then additionally, we both saw the movie Queer, which is Luca Guadagnino's other movie this year after Challengers. This one stars Daniel Craig and Drew Starkey. It is based on the William S. Burroughs book, and it is very druggy. Did you know that queer people often did drugs? Who knew?
Well, I started Black Doves finally, and it was very representative of the queer experience. There's cruising and coke lines in the first episode.
And an inexplicable draw to Keira Knightley. We can't get away.
This year is coming to a close, and by this point, Louis and I have seen nearly every film with awards buzz. Of course, we've already talked about the big ones like Anora and Wicked, but there are still a few films that we need to get into, starting with Luca Guadagnino's Queer.
Okay, first of all, I mean, if you're expecting something along the lines of Call Me By Your Name, which is, probably still Luca's most famous movie, you actually kind of will get it in that it's about these two people who are sort of off on their own in this exotic environment, and there's a lot to look at. Call Me By Your Name, set in Italy, is more lush to look at. This is more kind of seedy and urban. You're in Mexico, and then they go down to South America. It still is very immersive, like Call Me By Your Name, but otherwise, it's about these two people, and they don't really explain their dynamic. They sort of just end up together and hanging out all the time. It's this culture in Mexico where, like, it's in the 50s, and they just are sort of walking from bar to bar. Daniel Craig plays this lead character who's nothing but an alcoholic walking around looking for a good time. And his personality is somewhat insufferable. And he ends up with this Drew Starkey guy who looks preened to the extreme, very like a gorgeous 50s nerd. And they end up hanging out together. And that's really it. Like, it's not about a plot or what happens really. They end up going to South America and trying some sort of ayahuasca-like drug given to them by Leslie Manville. And girl, you would not know that was Leslie Manville. What?
I mean,
she
Poison
was giving,
Ivy, okay?
Yeah. Gnarled. She was like 3/4 of the way towards being the Meryl Streep character in Into the Woods.
Okay,
like,
yes.
That's, and then you're sort of just left with, well, what was the point of that? Is there a narrative here? And I think truly it's just about the immersion. And on that level, it's an awesome movie and rad and uncompromising. And Luca continues to be this director who exists in the mainstream. We're all excited about his projects. And yet I don't find any of his choices to be contrived. He's like very rare and cool. I don't know what to say about him other than I continue to be psyched for what he does because he's making unconventional choices and putting unconventional things on the screen. And maybe it'll leave some people a little bit cold, but I still feel like the musk of that movie is on me.
I felt like the movie was entertaining. I was, strapped in for it. And I do still have it lingering in my mind. I actually saw it months ago at this point. But so it's still on my mind. However, it is not one of my favorite Luca films at all.
I will say, I feel like his other movies tend to be more emotionally charged. This one, I mean, like, there are emotions in it, and at the end, it sort of has an emotional ending when he's thinking about how his relationship with this Drew Starkey guy sort of has stayed with him. But you're right, it's not satisfying in a character way, the way that, like, Challengers or Call Me By Your Name or, like, A Bigger Splash is.
Yeah, it's very much in the Suspiria realm for me, which I hate.
No, Suspiria I straight up did not like. To me, it was just pure torture. And also, well, I don't understand you horror people. Where it's just, I need to get to the theater to watch this bone twist in half. Why? Ask yourself. And yet you just go.
Positives. In addition to Leslie Manville, there is a completely unrecognizable Jason Schwartzman.
Oh, what a shocking performance. First of all, Jason Schwartzman was on this show. And
I
he's
wish
just like
we'd had seen that performance by the time we got to talk to him. Because
and he's like a nice, unassuming man. And then the way he acts as this character where he's like this sort of quaint and yet weird and yet hypersexual gay dude who's like paunchy and like rolling around. Actually, he does certain things with his limbs that remind me of, there's no other way to put it, Jiminy Glick. Like the way the legs come up and fold over.
Yeah.
Which also, by the way, in this hyper-realistic movie is a wild choice.
Yeah, it's a wild choice. It's fun. It's sort of like, it never crossed over into feeling like there's 3 people playing queer people in this film who are not queer. Well, one of them maybe. No one's really asking Daniel Craig about all of that. But he is having a lovely press tour where he's talking about tapping into other sides of his, psyche. So I love that for James Bond. But Jason Schwartzman feels very lived in as this character. And I enjoyed him a lot. One of my standouts in this film is Drew Droege.
Drew Droege is a comic in LA who I can't believe he hasn't been on this show, but he has a smallish part in this as this guy who's sitting at the bar in this movie. And he feels like, well, first of all, he is an actual gay guy. So there's already some credibility there. But he has this sort of poise and snark that just is quintessentially queer guy at a bar. Like when you see a 50s movie or a movie about the 50s and gay people therein, this is the character you want to see.
Mm-hmm. I would say that one of my problems with this film is that I feel like it's, once they leave Mexico, I sort of feel like it just unspools. It's sort of, what are we doing here? It becomes a journey, but sort of a journey without a point. Sort of, I guess there's a point, he's searching, for ayahuasca, essentially. William S. Burroughs is looking for ayahuasca. Now we know that ayahuasca is basically this thing that, people are running around doing all the fucking time, You always know someone who's going on an ayahuasca retreat. So it's interesting to hear, about the origins of people going to grab it from South America, but it doesn't really, to compare it to Call Me By Your Name, it doesn't really have that sort of end point or sort of even pathos of the trip, I guess, because in that one, that's their final trip before they're never going to see each other again, And there's a point that sort of hits the drive of this film. There's a moment at the end between Leslie Manville and Drew Starkey that I think is beautiful. But that's sort of the only time it's touched upon in the film. And I feel like for a large part of the film, Drew Starkey is sort of a cipher and not really explored. And it's interesting because that's the point of the film. But it left me wanting in the same way that I also felt like Harris Dickinson was a cipher in Baby Girl. It's focused on Daniel Craig, and then Baby Girl is focused on Nicole Kidman's psyche, their sort of mania, their desperation over this one person. But then you sort of really don't know anything about that person on the other end,
Yeah. I kind of like that because also in Call Me By Your Name, what happens with Armie Hammer almost doesn't make sense. Like he's this crush object from outer space. He's so hot. And then suddenly he's in love with Elio seemingly. And then they go on a trip together, much like in this movie. And then it's over. Like you don't really understand the full story.
Sounds like a man.
With him. Yeah, that's what I mean. I kind of, that's what I like about this movie because that's like the peace you come with when you go through an experience like that and you don't understand where the other person is coming from. Just, well, I guess that's that. I think that in a way that is true to life or truer to life than most movies are.
That's fair. What I will also say, though, is the latter half of the film gets into a lot of trippy shit, of course.
Quite.
Yeah. And I feel like you need Cliff Notes, or at least to have read the book or looked up William S. Burroughs' story to understand the film. Because at the end, there's some imagery. There's like a dream sequence where he's shooting at a character, and that makes sense if you know that William S. Burroughs killed his wife during a game of William Tell at a party.
Right. Yes. And that's literally exactly what happens here. There's like a thing on somebody's head, and you're like, is this hallucinated, or what is happening here?
The character that Drew Starkey is based on is a discharged American Navy member, and his name was Adalbert Lewis Marker. And allegedly, this man was at the party where the William Tell shooting happened.
I hope there aren't William Tell parties going on. I didn't think I had to worry about this. I didn't think it was that resonant a tale to everybody that we would just go ahead and reenact it. But yeah, I mean, like, I'll say the William S. Burroughs character, Daniel Craig, not one thing about this person is appealing. Like, throughout the movie, he's not charismatic. He comes into bars and is immediately slurring and slipping, and maybe I just have, I find overindulgence at bars like sick anyway. Like, once you're over the age of 30, it's just unacceptable. So when you're seeing that, it's gross, and you're having to kind of identify with this character and his longings throughout the movie. So I could see that also being a bit alienating for people watching. But wow, I didn't know any of that about William S. Burroughs, though. So I mean, it does add a lot of context to what you see. And also, by the way, there's just something in general about long, druggy scenes in movies where I can kind of sign on. I understand cinema is a way to convey what maybe goes through somebody's head as they're having an experience like this. But at the same time, I'm still not experiencing it. It still just feels like what I can sit, like, it's hard not to be stereotypical when doing these scenes of like strange, surreal images.
I will say the one film last year, I guess, at this point, that managed to convey drugs in a really good way. I thought that the ketamine scene in All of Us Strangers was beautiful.
Yeah, pretty reined in too, because I don't think of that as like a drug movie. You know?
Also, the drug scene in this movie, Luca was carrying in this film, because the anachronistic music that's in this film when they're snorting cocaine,
talk about that.
When they're snorting cocaine and Prince's musicology starts playing.
Excuse me, not just any Prince from 2003 or 4. Very weird. And also, like, they play 17 Days by Prince, which is a B-side. It's on his 3-disc B-sides collection, I believe. But also, when Drew Starkey first appears on the screen, we hear Come As You Are by Nirvana, which is obviously a 90s song. The movie opens with a Sinead O'Connor cover of Nirvana's All Apologies. Now, I'm not saying these aren't all songs I want to hear. In fact, I love all of this music, specifically and own it. I don't know that pairing it with the 1950s, it just is like, I don't get it. I don't understand the choice. It's jarring, and I feel like there's a specific kind of music that these characters would be listening to during that time, and maybe it feels literal to Luca to use that or expected, but I still think it would have added something.
It was very eclectic. Let's just say that. There's room for everything.
It was anything goes, and yet I was like, why is it going?
Yeah, it's also a little long.
Yeah, well, again, if you have this long, extended drug sequence, I think it's going to just, and it doesn't particularly add to a narrative. It's hard not to argue, oh, this could be cut. But of course, that's also the point too. Like you kind of are living in this museum piece that's supposed to sort of you're supposed to just be enveloped by it and stay in it.
Yeah. And I mean, the ayahuasca scene is very intense. I would say it's intense. And I would also say for a queer film, I think that the sex scenes and the intimacy in it is a step up from Call Me By Your Name. He doesn't do the panning away thing anymore. In fact, there's a joke where he pans away to a window and then pans back.
And then they're in the middle of like visual, clear sex. Also, I want to say there was one moment in this movie that stood up to something I love about Challengers, which is when they go to South America, there's a confrontation with an animal, and the music playing during that scene is clearly the Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross batch of good times. And that whatever that song is so good. I will be replaying that the same way I replayed Match Point or whatever that song is called from Challengers earlier this year.
I think that's just a movie by Woody Allen.
I remember at one point people said this is the greatest Woody Allen movie of all time. Guys, no, it's not. I never want to see that again.
I actually really enjoy the movie, but I was on board with that mostly because I feel like it's maybe one of the first Woody Allen films I ever saw.
Yeah. You were a late comer.
Yeah.
I saw Small Time Crooks in the theater. That was my first one.
There's still a few other films that we have to see, but I do want to say that I saw Hard Truths this weekend. And
you did.
I am livid now after our conversation last week about the Golden Globes. I am livid that Marianne Jean-Baptiste is not the clear frontrunner.
What an uncompromising performance, uncompromising movie. I don't want to spoil it other than this is a woman who has trouble dealing with society, dealing with everyday interactions, dealing with the people around her. And aside from solving it, the movie just presents it and doesn't present easy solutions. And it's such an amazing movie. And she is so good in it. I just can't compare this performance to anything else. She's... It starts off funny and then is tragic and then is strange. And it reminds you of the way you feel about people in your life you just can't figure out.
Yeah, and I think that the focus on her sister and her sister's family, too, is just such a
She's great also.
Yeah,
yes.
Well-rounded story about this black family in the UK. And obviously it's Mike Leigh, who has done Secrets and Lies, one of Louis and I's favorite films.
Starring also Marianne Jean-Baptiste, who is fabulous in that movie and Oscar nominated for that movie. We talked to Juliette Binoche this year about that particular set of nominees when she apologized to Lauren Bacall for beating her for what was expected to be Lauren Bacall's Oscar. But if you know the story of that year, you know that Lauren Bacall was stupid to assume she'd win for that performance in The Mirror Has Two Faces, a movie that is 2 stars at best.
She was sniffing that coffee.
Yeah. Talk about high points. Somebody was high on that point.
Is there anything else that's sort of hitting you before the end of the year?
Well, I mean, I don't want to say I'm underwhelmed by all the movies this year. I guess there's still a couple I have to see. I'm Still Here, starring Fernanda Torres, who was in the great movie Central Station almost 30 years ago now. But otherwise, I think Mikey Madison's performance is staying with me. I'm looking forward to how Honora does at the Oscars. It feels like Sean Baker has been waiting to have this moment of culmination. Even though, by the way, I thought Red Rocket was so good and got so little play. And that's still, I think, my favorite movie of his, starring Simon Rex, who went on this podcast. Excellent performance.
They're adding a Sean Baker collection to Criterion in January. And so if you have not seen take out Prince of Broadway or Starlet, now's your chance to see them.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. Do you have any other prestige movies that are sticking out to you this season?
I also feel like it's sort of a weird year. I mean, it's good that Wicked is getting so much attention. It's good that sort of a blockbuster film that everyone seems to really enjoy is a part of the conversation, because I like it when the Oscars isn't just obscure films to mainstream audiences, But I don't know. I feel like we're in this weird space where some of the movies just sort of hadn't come out yet, or there's conversations about things that maybe I just haven't seen. So
I will say, though, I do think Timothée Chalamet is fabulous in A Complete Unknown, a movie that I expected to be a traditional biopic. And I guess in a way it is. It doesn't break the rules or anything, but it just... I don't feel like it was trying too hard to prove anything about Bob Dylan, and as such, it was just an immersive way to experience like Greenwich Village at that time, his relationship with Joan Baez, and I liked the ending of it. It said something about what guides Bob Dylan, and even though I think we've had that mythology explained to us a few times, I thought this movie did that in a sort of a dignified way.
Yeah, I feel like mostly a lot of the films, too, that we're talking about are things that are weirdly from the beginning of the year or the summer. I mean, I'm thinking The Substance. I'm thinking Challengers, Zendaya and Demi Moore. But it doesn't feel like there's a lot of things currently that are very buzzy.
Sticky. Yeah, right. I will say this, though, about The Substance. And, of course, like, I think people love that movie, and I think it does offer something, and it would be a strange movie in the Oscars conversation if it gets there. I didn't come away from The Substance thinking Demi Moore needs an Oscar nomination. It's like sort of weird that it's heading this way, I think. I like the scene where she's in the mirror smearing the makeup. That's good. But otherwise, I feel like the star of the movie is the editing and the directing and the makeup.
I truly think that this is a phenomenon of a woman that we love sort of doing a wild performance, and it feels similar to Charlize Theron doing Monster, of course, but it doesn't really go that far for me. I just think
there's so much more acting in Monster.
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, like she's a completely transformed individual. But speaking of career, I mean, I have to get back to Isabella Rossellini and Conclave for a second, because it's getting serious. Now people are like, she should win. Okay, I enjoy Isabella Rossellini. in Conclave, people are saying, well, it's just like Beatrice Straight in Network. She was in it for 5 seconds. Guys, Beatrice Straight dominates the 5 minutes she is in Network. She is the sole voice of humanity in Network. Everybody else is a ghoul. She comes in and says, how can you treat somebody this way? How can your priorities be this messed up? How can you humiliate me like this? It's just a complete character arc in 5 minutes. Guys, Isabella Rossellini operates a printer and then stands and says, I have one thing to say, and then literally stands back. To vote for this as the best female supporting performance of the year, I'm going to say it is almost downright sexist compared to what other people are bringing in movies. And I'm talking about one, again, Danielle Deadwyler. I'm saying the words again. She is amazing in The Piano Lesson. And also Anjanou Ellis-Taylor in Nickel Boys. Watch those 2 movies and be like, yeah, Isabella Rossellini should beat them.
Well, let me tell you something. It is very hard to operate a printer in 2024.
Oh, they don't give you the. I
What's
lost
going
the
on?
instructions. Yeah, yeah.
But
Should I go to Kinko's? Yeah.
But of course, I love her in this film, and I love the film, obviously, and I'd be fine with her getting a nomination, but to win would be ludicrous. I'm not going that far.
No, she doesn't have an arc. She just says one thing that's amusing. It's like a slightly sassy line delivery.
It's also in the trailer.
Yes, it is in the trailer. Correct.
Yeah, so she doesn't do much. And obviously, Danielle Deadwyler and Anjanou Ellis are people who have been looked over for 2 of their best performances at the Oscars.
Right.
So let's get them in there. Obviously, I have not seen Nickel Boys yet, so I do not know how her performance in that compares to Origin. But these are 2 women who really deserve their due by the Academy and also just the industry. Cast them in shit.
Also, I mean, like we're in this weird period before Danielle is in everything. I'm not worried about her. That said, she is in Carry On, the Taron Egerton thriller on Netflix.
Is that what you were posting about?
TSA. Yes. Okay. So, by the way, this is a real test moment for Danielle. Not 1% of this character she plays is fabulous. She's like, the detective lady who has to come in and save the airport or whatever. She is excellent. It becomes a powerhouse performance thanks to her. So, again, her moment at the Oscars will come. Why delay it when it's already this good?
Okay, Richard Lawson loved this movie and wrote about it in Vanity Fair, and I had no idea that it was out. I didn't realize what you were posting about was a film. I thought it was I saw Netflix, so I was like, maybe it's a TV series. But now I'm excited to watch.
It's an airport thriller, and besides one set piece that involves like a big fight that happens on a conveyor belt with all the luggage on it, which feels like it's out of like Monsters Inc. or some bullshit, the rest of it is so good.
This weekend, I finally watched Juror Number 2.
Which exists. Yes, that's Nicholas Hoult and Toni Collette being told what to do by Clint Eastwood, who is in his early 300s. What is happening in this movie?
So it's a film where Nicholas Hoult is expecting a baby with Zoe Deutsch.
Oh, daughter of Leah Thompson, who was so good in Everybody Wants Some, and then we just didn't do much with her.
He gets picked for jury duty. And the crime in it is that a man was at a bar, got into a fight with his girlfriend. She stormed out. He followed. People from the bar saw. And then she ended up dead in a quarry.
Okay.
Now, very early on, Nicholas Hoult is listening to this story and remembers that he, who is a recovering alcoholic, went to the same bar that night, got a drink, did not drink it, got into his car, and because it was dark and rainy, hit something and thought it was a deer. And now he's starting to figure out if maybe he killed the woman and not the man who's on trial.
Oh, Jesus. I hope this story happens all the time. This is plucked right from the headlines.
You also have Kiefer Sutherland in this film as an attorney.
Is he scary?
No, he's affable.
Oh, is this movie good? It seemed like it caught on for a second.
I liked it quite a bit. I think it's really quite good. I think that it's amazing that Clint Eastwood churned out a movie this good when he's on his deathbed.
I guess not. Just like going and going and going.
No, it was a surprise that I loved this movie so much.
All right. Unfortunately, I will have to check it out.